Welcome, everyone. And as I said, thank you to the Freelancer Club for hosting myself and WorkClub today. So as we can see here, we want to talk about how we're going to find valuable clients beyond freelance platforms. And within the freelance community, all of us know this is a big issue and something that a lot of us kind of have difficulty with. And, there's a lot of conversation about it online. And it's something that we all kind of struggle with really and need help with. And one of the kind of big problems with that really is this first port of call with freelance platforms. So I think when a lot of people move into freelance, particularly within the creative industries, a lot of them think that, you have to go to the Upworks of the world to get work, and that's kind of solely where you need to build your rapport and where you're going to get your clients from. Now, I'm not saying that you can't use these platforms at all. I know of people that have been very successful on them and have actually carved out kind of very particular niches and found good clients. But the problem and the issue facing so many freelancers right now with these platforms is when you're on them, largely the client's priority is price, right? We've all been there. So the whole way they're built, it's a race to the bottom, and it's about who can do what I need largely for the cheapest price. Yes, you will get some clients on there that are willing to pay your desired rate and pay kind of premium, but largely you're competing with everyone on price. And as we all know, when you've got access to a global workforce, and a lot of those people are living in countries where the cost of living is just far less, there's just no way you can compete. There's no way that you can actually get clients that are willing to pay your desired rate and willing to give you the money that you can to sustain your freelance career, so that you can live on a day-to-day basis. Not even about building businesses and stuff, even just meeting your baseline is very, very difficult. So what we want to talk about today is looking at finding clients that will value your skills and pay competitive rates. And I think that's the most important thing here. You don't want to go into this thinking, oh, I've got to drop my price, I've got to kind of hit at the bottom. It's finding people that you can relate to on your level, and making sure that they're willing to pay for your value, right? They're not just in it for price. And I'm kind of going to go through a 5-point process now of kind of getting in the mindset of thinking like a client and intercepting them at certain points and offering your skills and showing them that you are a valuable asset and you can essentially do what they need you to do and not have to search online for the cheapest price. So the first thing I want to think about is, if you're in the mind of a client and they're not looking on a freelance platform, what are they thinking? Where are they going to go to find the person they need? And the first step is they're going to look through their closed network and connections, right? They're going to think, okay, who do I know, or who within my close network can do this thing, right? So a lot of this now boils down to your people skills, right? This is all about networking. It's all about getting in meeting as many people as possible and getting into as many networks as possible. So I'm just going to give you a very kind of interesting example really of how this has worked for me. So you can see on the left here, back when I was freelancing as a creative designer and a graphic designer, this was kind of back in like 2013, 2014, I attended a number of networking events, and I get it. It's really difficult. There are a lot of time and effort. There's a lot of kind of meeting new people. It can be very overwhelming, and it is overwhelming and it is difficult, but it does get easier. Now, I probably attended over the course of, say, 18 months, I probably attended 10, 11, 12 kind of big networking events in South Wales. And I met so many different people. And initially you're thinking, oh, why am I doing this, right? This isn't going to work, this is pointless. But here's like one journey that happened, from me just kind of meeting the right people, right? So I'm at a particular networking event. I've met so many different people. A guy called Greg from Business Wales, we start chatting, it's really good. He's a nice guy. We have interesting conversation about design. I give him my business card. A few months down the line, then I'm contacted by someone called Sophie from Design Wales. She got my contact from Greg. She really liked the work I was doing, and she invited us in kind of Christmas time just to meet with her and talk about kind of what they do within the design world sphere. Several months later then, I was invited to tender for one of their potential clients. I didn't get it, unfortunately, but then several months after that, then Sophie connected me to a guy called David, who had a consulting firm. He then connected me to a startup that needed branding and visualization work. And then from there, then once I kind of did a good job with that client, then David recommended me to his wife, Helen. Again, another project with Helen and her acupuncture business. And then finally, then she passed on my details to someone called Shoned, who was also in the kind of health and wellness space. Now, the important point I want to make here is this process you're looking at, this happened over 2 years. And I'm going to touch on the kind of instant gratification a little bit later, but I think one of the most important things going into this is you have to be conscious of the lead time and the amount of time that it can take to get from A to B. As I said, from the networking event through to the Shoned client, that was, like I said, 2 years of just kind of back and forth and certain people connecting me to certain other people who were interested with me. And it wasn't until about step 5 or 6 that I was actually starting to get paid work. So you have to go in with this mindset of the connections I'm making now are going to come to fruition 6, 7, 8, 9 months down the line, possibly even further. And it's not about getting work right now. It's about making as many connections as possible. So the second thing I want to think about with a potential client is, okay, they've asked in their closed space, right? And they haven't found anyone. So one of the next things they would potentially do is ask in a wide network for recommendations. So this is where you see people posting in big Facebook groups and LinkedIn groups and saying like, hey, I need to do a particular thing. Does anyone know anyone? And this then is, connected to, it's kind of like who you know and who you know, right? So this is where you want to expand your wider network. So the first 2 points touch on people skills really, and your willingness to go out there and kind of connect and chat and talk to certain people. Now, the third thing the potential client would do is they'll search online. Now, this is where we're going to get quite technical. If someone can't, say someone's looking for a photographer, they can't find it in their particular network, that they've asked for recommendations and they've not really found anyone. One of the next things they would do then is search online. So they go onto Google. Now, this is where an understanding of SEO and targeted content marketing can be incredibly beneficial for your freelance business. Now, I'm not going to cover this in any depth at all. I mean, this alone is a talk for, we could talk for hours about this stuff. But what I will say to the freelancers on this call is, if you don't, try and get a very basic understanding of how search works, how SEO works, because you'll find that it will make your personal brand far more visible if you understand what people are searching for and then how you can get in front of them. There's several ways you can do this. On-page SEO is something you should really look into. So, making sure that your personal brand and your site is optimized for certain keywords, making sure that your site is fast, that Google likes what you're doing, looking at making sure your structure is there and everything kind of is running smoothly, good backlinks to your site as well. Another thing you can think about then is content marketing. So if someone's looking for best photographer in London, think about, okay, well, how can I create some type of blog post or some type of content that would show if someone searched for that search term. And again, this is not going to happen overnight. Again, this is a strategy that would have to be implemented over several months because, Google, it can be a vicious beast. And, particularly if you have a low authority domain, you're not going to kind of rank highly, within the first few months. Sometimes it's going to take weeks, months, even years, but this is something that you can be actively doing now that can then hopefully kind of come to fruition later in the year. Number 4, the potential client could discover the skill/talent that you have and then decide that they want it. So a great example I have of this, when the Rugby World Cup came to the UK and was hosted in England, Wales hosted a few of the games in the Millennium Centre. So to celebrate the Rugby World Cup coming to Cardiff, they hired, I can't remember the guy's name now, but he runs a big marketing firm, and they hired him to kind of do something creative, and they came up with what was known as a hashtag as ball in the wall, and they put this massive rugby ball in Cardiff Castle on the side here. Now, this campaign went insanely viral, and overnight, this guy went from the most wanted, demanded marketing person kind of in Wales and the South. Everyone wanted to work with him, and everyone wanted the campaign to be like ball in the wall, which was kind of absolutely hilarious because a few weeks prior, no one even had ever heard of this ball in the wall concept. No marketing manager even wanted it. But as soon as they saw it, they were like, oh, wow, yes, that is exactly what I want. And this can be a great way to intercept potential clients and show them the value of something that you could do with them without them even realizing it. The last thing then, and this is kind of a quite important one, the fifth way that a potential client would think about hiring you is responding to kind of trends in the landscape and then sourcing someone who is an authority on it. So what do I mean by this? Now, I'm going to bring up this slide here. Now, initially, you're probably thinking, okay, like what's all this slide about? But there's method to the madness, I promise you. So when 50 Shades came out, this kind of changed the landscape of writing. All of a sudden, everyone started writing erotica. Because all of a sudden now you had this like global phenomenon that was kind of making it acceptable to. Now, all these people who were writing erotica, they needed people to do their InDesign documents for their books. They needed people to do artwork. They needed people to do marketing. And this trend only lasted kind of 2 to 3 years. But at the time, the people who kind of jumped in and got in early, it was incredibly lucrative. And these people were willing to pay a proper price, because they had actual budgets and certain, things that they were willing to use. They weren't just kind of jumping on freelance platforms and looking for the cheapest job. They actually wanted a quality product and they're willing to pay for it. Another one is Tasty. Remember when those Tasty videos come out and everything was looking down and cooking? Now, videographers, again, this was only a phase for maybe like a year or two, but those kind of top-down videos were incredibly popular for a number of years. And marketing managers and people were kind of wild for them, and they wanted that style of video. So the photographers that kind of jumped on that trend, for a period of time, it was very lucrative, and there was a lot of work and a lot of opportunity to get involved with that. And a personal one of mine on the end here is Snapchat filters. For a little while, the Snapchat geo filters were incredibly popular, and I ended up working with some clients like Brecon Carried Water. Contact of mine did some work for the Millennium Stadium, and it was all around designing for Snapchat. Now that kind of fad has passed, but in the moment, if you can seize an opportunity and you realize there's a growing trend on the market here, and everyone is kind of thinking, well, this is something I want. If you can position yourself as an authority figure and offer that service for a period of time, you can become the go-to person or one of the go-to people to provide this certain service. And just one last kind of case study I want to talk to you about before we head into to the end of the talk. So this is me and my brother at MozCon in 2015. Now, I went to MozCon as a non-marketer. I went with my brother. MozCon is in Seattle. It's one of the biggest kind of digital marketing conferences. I went there as a non-marketer, and I realized there's a room of people here that could kind of benefit from my skills. So I didn't try to be salesy. What I did was two things. One, I was very proactive on Twitter within this conference. A lot of people not even looking at the conference sometimes, they're just on Twitter tweeting about it. So I created a series of kind of visuals and graphics to kind of accompany all the talks that were going on. I was very active online, kind of commenting and talking to people. And then the second thing I did then was I wrote a blog post, and I called it The Mole of MozCon, what it's like to be a non-marketer at one of the world's biggest marketing conferences. I wrote this quick post, kind of really hashed together. I posted it in the Facebook group, and it kind of just spread like wildfire. And so many people were commenting and saying, oh, wow, yeah, like you're resonating my thoughts. Like I feel the same. I'm a photographer, I love being here, but it's great to know that there are other non-marketers here. A big SEO company's manager then reached out to me and said, hey, I saw your post. I kind of loved your angle. I love the authority you gave. And I want to commission you to do some freelance work. I've seen your infographics. I love them, and I want to work with you. And I ended up doing, working with this guy for sort of 18 months, and it brought in kind of several £1,000s worth of work. And that was all from just this kind of thing that I posted in a Facebook group. Now, willing to bet if I just reached out to this guy and said, hey, like, these are my services, like he wouldn't have even given my email a second look. And I think that's kind of like the important point that I want to make here is finding clients this way requires greater innovation, hard work, and time. Okay, that's a given. This isn't going to happen overnight, but in the long run, it is absolutely far more prosperous. You're going to connect with people who are willing to pay more for your work and pay a competitive rate. And like I said, this is kind of testament really to some of the great work that the Freelance Club do, because obviously one of their roles is trying to educate people about this. People on platforms, you are going up against people who are going to charge a much less hourly rate than you, and that's really difficult. And again, gig platforms are built on a culture of instant gratification, right? It's very easy on a gig platform to know that, right, that's $100 job, that's a $200 job. If I just land it, I know I've got $200 in the bank, which feels good, right? It feels good to know that you have X amount of money coming in within the next couple of weeks or whatever. But while this feels good in the short term, long term, the hustle, it can be very damaging, mentally for you, because it's a constant uphill battle. And myself and Matt will kind of discuss this more in a little bit. So it's vital to understand the difference between connecting and selling, right? We've all had these messages on LinkedIn from people who will try and sell you their services off the bat. And actually what you should really be trying to do is just have honest conversations, make connections with these people. And yes, your lead time will be weeks, months, even years. And yes, it's so hard to visualize that, because you just don't know when these particular clients will come to fruition. But in the long run, it's just going to be far more prosperous for you, because you're going to actually connect with people who have, appropriate budgets, who are willing to pay your competitive rates. And then you'll be able to actually sustain yourself. You only need kind of 2-3 recurring clients at this level, and you can already kind of, hit a very nice baseline. So just to quickly sum up, finding clients the right way. If they don't go to platforms, right, you want to try and intercept them at one of these 5 points. So number one, they're going to ask, who do I know? Who do I know in my immediate circles? I'm trying to get in there. If they don't know anyone in their immediate circles, they're going to ask, who do the people I know, right? So they're going to go wider. They're going to ask in groups and at events and Facebook groups. And it's important to try and be as visual as possible in these things, and just try and be human and honest, and kind of share your thoughts and knowledge. 3, what does Google say? Can I intercept them on Google? Can I rank highly for a particular keyword or a particular thing, particularly when it's a localized search as well? It's going to make it far easier for you. Number 4, they're going to say, ooh, I want that, I like that. So trying to think of innovative, creative ways to put your work out there without trying to have a salesy angle on it. And then finally, looking at the landscape, looking at the trends, is there anything that my particular skills can plug into right now and almost become an authority on a particular thing that is happening, that everyone's talking about right now? And like I said, for people in marketing, I see so many, should I be on TikTok? So there is a huge gap there for various people to come in and become an authority on TikTok marketing and whether that's appropriate for your business. Thank you for listening to that talk today. As I said, please feel free to check out workclubhq.com. All our kind of amazing spaces, once the lockdown lifts, will be available to members. And as I said as well, we have a great online community with a lot of freelancers as well, who a lot of them go through these problems of finding work at competitive rates. So there's plenty of interesting people to talk to.